طيب بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. I'd like to welcome you all to this extraordinary class at night, kind of late night. So this will be actually our first lecture in week 14, inshallah the last week of lectures for ICS 104. Any question before we proceed, ya shabab? No questions? Okay. Right. So let me share the screen then.
Doctor,
نعم.
did you discuss what happened with the quiz 3 grade?
Did I discuss what happened with the quiz regrade? Which regrade?
We didn't get the grade for the quiz, I mean.
Quiz 5?
No, 3.
Oh, quiz 3 لسه ما لسه لا. Until now I haven't finished. I'll try to finish it inshallah soon. I'll try to finish it soon. طيب, do you see the screen يا شباب?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So inshallah what we will do today is we'll go to another chapter and an interesting subject which is regarding pointers and modular programming. So we will be basically going over chapter 6, sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what do we expect at the end of this chapter? Well, hopefully at the end of this chapter, you will be able to use pointers and indirect addressing in writing small C programs, read data from files and write data into files. We will do that kind of quickly. Return function results through a function's arguments. Recognize the differences between call by value and call by reference. This is very important. Inshallah, we'll do it today. Distinguish between input, in-out, and output parameters. We'll talk about that, inshallah. And finally, determine the scope of names in a C program. And inshallah, maybe the last two topics will be discussed next lecture, next Monday, inshallah. So let's start with pointers. What are pointers? Well, basically, pointers are the old term, for the term that we use these days, which is basically reference. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that you remember that we have used the word reference in Python. Okay, so how do we basically interpret a statement like this, double star P? Okay, now we know double P. What was double P, ya shabab?
Float number?
Yes, it's a real number. You're defining a real variable, right? You're defining a real variable, a double variable called P. Right. So what does this star P means? Well, star P means that you're not defining a double variable. You are defining a variable that contains the address of a double. Again, you are defining a variable that contains the address of a double or a reference to a double variable. A reference to a double. Okay. Well, a reference to a double value. Okay. A reference to a double value. So the variable is a reference to a double value. Is an address of a double value. All this is the same. Okay. So P is considered as a pointer variable of type pointer to double. Pointer to double. In current object-oriented languages notation, we say that P is a reference to a variable of type double, or in fact, maybe it's better to say to a value or to a double value. Okay, to a double value, to a double value. he stores the address in memory of a variable of type double. Now, do you remember this image?
Yes. Like a list.
How is this related to what we are talking about?
It's like a reference.
See values, the variable values, does not contain in itself, you know, the 32, 54, 76, 67.5, 29, etc. No. It is only a reference. It is only a reference to a list of values. Okay, it's the address. So this is basically the address of the first element in the list. This is the address of the first element in the list. That's why when you say values and then you put 1, well, now you are talking about the second element in the list. Okay, and then the third element in the list, and so on and so forth, right? So the value of values is a reference. In other words, is an address. In other words, which is kind of old terminology that is used by C, a pointer to a list, right? A pointer to a list. But we don't say that values is a pointer to a list. These days we say values is a reference to a list. But all these are basically the same. All these are basically the same. So if we look at this this code, now the first line we are already familiar with. Int m equal 25. What did I do? I defined a. What did I define?
Variable.
What type of variable?
Integer.
An integer variable. I defined an integer variable and I assigned it the value 25. And I assigned it the value 25. Right. What does this line do? Well, this line defines a variable which is called item that is a pointer to an integer value. That is a pointer to an integer value. Okay? طيب. Now, who can tell me what is this?
Addressing
To
the
address.
pointer.
Say that again.
To address the M to the pointer.
Aywa. See, now what we are doing is we are assigning item the address of the variable m. We are assigning item the address of the variable m. So now I have two ways to access the variable m. One way is through the variable m. You know, when you say m equal 25, m equal m plus 1, you're basically accessing the value m. You know, you fetch it in the right hand side of the assignment, and then you assign it to the variable m, which is in the left hand side of the assignment. So this is one way. Now the other way is by using star item. Star item. So when you say star item equal 30, when you say star item equal 30, you are basically assigning 30, or you're putting 30 in the location which is basically referred to by the variable m. So if you imagine that, you know, the variable m, the value of the variable m was actually starting at address 1024, then item in itself, it contains 1024, right? Item contains 1024, the address of m. So when I say star item, then I'm accessing this value. If it was in the right-hand side of the assignment, I will basically fetch the 25. If it's in the left-hand side of the assignment, then I'm assigning whatever in the right-hand side, I'm assigning it here. Okay, so I have now two ways to access m. And that's why this form of addressing is called indirect addressing. Okay? This form of addressing is called indirect address or indirect reference. So when we try to access the contents of a memory cell through a pointer variable that stores its address, then we are using what we call an indirect reference to the variable, right? So when I say star item equal 35, then I have changed M. So M was 25. When I finish execution of this statement, the value of M becomes 35. I will be storing 35 here. So the 25 will go, and I will have 35 because of, you know, star item equal 35. If again I say M equal 40, this 35 will go, and I will store 40 in M, in which, by the way, if I access it through star item will give me the 40. Star item will give me the 40. Any question, ya shabab? Any question?
Doctor, so star item will equal M always?
A star item is exactly the same as M.
So what's...
Unless you change the address, the value in item. For example, if you had int n, and then you say item equal the address of n. So now I stop, you know, I don't have access to the variable m. Now I have access to another value. واضح؟
ما فهمت دكتور.
And what I meant was, the only time when item will point to something other than m is if you change its value. Now, how did we assign item? You know, we assigned item through this statement, صح? We said item equal the address of m, right? So now, if you do another one and you say item equal the address of, let's say, another variable n. After I execute this statement, do I have access to m through item?
No.
No, I will have access to n. واضح؟
ايه واضح.
تمام. Right. So basically, how do I declare a pointer? Well, just like, you know, how do I declare an integer in C? Well, I will say int, and then, for example, p. Right. How do I declare a pointer to an integer? Well, I need to add a star before the variable. So, for example, the type, and then star, and then variable, and then, of course, the semicolon. So we can have, you know, float star p, and then semicolon. Now, what does that mean? Well, this means that p is a pointer to a float value. A pointer to a float value. Now, the float, by the way, is similar to double, but float is what we call single precision. So the precision of a float variable is less than the precision of a double. That's why actually it's called double. Because double precision. واضح يا شباب? But we do have a float in C, but it's better to use double because double has higher precision. Okay. So let's look at this code. Let me copy paste it to here. Okay. Let's copy paste it here. Now I would like I'd like you on the chat. Please look at it and tell me what will be printed on the chat. يلا يا شباب. On the chat. So int main void m equal 10, n equal 5, int star mp. So mp is a pointer to an integer, and then when I say here star np, np is also a pointer to an integer, right? And then I have this, and then I have this, and then I have the print statement. So let me give you 2 minutes, or basically until any one of you gives me the answer. يلا يا شباب شدوا لنا حيلكم. خلينا نشوف مين أول واحد راح يعطينا الأنسر. Okay, seems we got an answer. Oh, a couple of them. Right. So Abdul Hamid, he says 15, 15, 5, 5. And Hussein says 10, 15, 5, 5. اختلفوا العلماء. Okay. So what should we do? Well, first of all, format-wise, who's correct? Abdul Hamid or Hussein? Are all of them on the same line, or they should be on two different lines?
Abdul Hamid.
Abdul Hamid, صح? Because we have a backslash n, right? We have a backslash n. Okay. Right. So let's trace it together. ايش رايكم? Let us trace it. Let us trace it together. How do I trace it? Well, I will basically say m, okay, n, and then I have np, and np. Okay, just like, you know, whenever we trace anything, and I like to use this statement. Right, so when we start with m equal 10, n equal 5, what do? I put m equal 10 and n equal 5, صح? Right, next, mp is the address of m, right? The address of m. So, معلش, let me put here, this is the address of m. So, whatever m value is, if I do star mp, it will be basically the value of m, صح? So, let me put here address m, and np equal address n. Let me put for np, this is the address of n. واضح؟ طيب. Now, I have an assignment statement. يلا يا شباب. This is an easy question. How can I do this assignment statement? What should I do first?
Do the calculation on the right, then assign it to the left.
Excellent. I'll do the calculation in the right, and then I will assign it to the left. Right. Calculation in the right. What is the value of star mp? Well, star mp is the value stored by the variable m. So it is 10, right? Right. 10 plus. What is star np? The value stored by variable n. So if I go to n, it is 5. طيب, 10 plus 5 is what? 15, صح? And when I assign 15, where do I assign 15? Where do I assign 15 يا شباب?
In address mp.
ايش هو الادرس mp؟
هو الادرس حق m.
معناته ال 15 وين راح تروح؟
To m.
So m instead of 10 becomes ايش؟ Becomes 15. Okay, so that's the result of the first. That's the result of the first assignment. Right. Let's go now to the second assignment statement. Right. Second assignment statement. What do I do here? Star np minus star np. So first, star mp. So I need the value stored in the address of mp, which is basically m. What is the value of the variable m? Well, the value of the variable m is 15, صح? Right. 15 minus star np. What is the value stored by the address of n, which is basically the value of the variable n? Well, the value of the variable n is 5. So 15 minus 5 is how much? Is
10.
10. So where do I store the 10?
In n.
In n. So because the address of n, when you say star and the address of n, well, this is basically n itself. So I will store the 10 in in n. I store the 10 in n. So now when I look at the printf statement, the value of m is obviously what? 15, صح? And the value of star MP. What is the star MP? Well, star MP is the value stored in M, because MP is the address of M. So star MP is the value of M. What is the value of M? Well, the value of M is 15. So this is 15. And then this is in the first line. In the second line, the value of N. What is the value of N? 10. And then star NP, which is basically the value in the variable in the address of NP. Well, this is what this is again. 10. So what will be printed? 15, 15, 10, 10. Let's look at it. So if I do run here, you will see 15, 15, 10. واضح يا شباب؟ Any question?
Doctor, what will happen if I remove the stars?
Oh, and if you remove the stars, you are basically now dealing with pointers, and most probably you will end up with a problem because you're dealing with addresses, and it has a special meaning when you say MP plus 1. You are accessing the next, the variable stored after the integer pointed to by M. And the question is, do you have access to it or not? If you try to, print its value, sometimes, you will get what you call not that standard, output. It could be kind of, random. What do you get? You might hit, a segmentation fault, an error. You might hit another variable that you have access, but you don't know what it is, or it is not specified very well. But this is beyond the scope of our course. Okay, so for now we just need to know what is the pointer and how we access, the value stored in the address of that pointer, which is basically using the star. واضح؟
واضح.
تمام. So let's now come to functions with output parameters, right? So function arguments enable a function to manipulate different data each time it is called. Okay, each time it is called. So far, we know how to pass inputs to a function and how to use the return statement to send back one result. Right? So we can define our input as in the arguments of the function, and we have one output, which is the return, which is whatever is returned by the return statement. Right. Now, using indirect references, we can use the arguments. We can use the arguments to also return results. Okay. In addition to the one returned by the function. In addition to the one returned by the function. Right. How? Well, when a function call executes, the computer allocates memory space in the function data area for each formal parameter, right? For each formal parameter. The value of each actual parameter in the function call is stored in the memory cell allocated to its corresponding formal parameter in the function data area. In the function data area. For example, let me see, did we have any function here? Well, we haven't seen any function until now. So, right. Okay, so let's assume that I have, a function call. Let's say, let me write it down here. So, for example, f of, x and y. F of x and y. Okay. Now what happens when I call f of x and y inside main? Well, what happens is that inside the function, two memory addresses would be created for the value of for x and y. Okay, for x and y. And in the function call, what happens is the actual parameters of the function call will be copied to x and y. Will be copied to x and y. So, for example, if I call, f of z and 2, what will happen? Not the variable z, but the value of the variable z will be copied to x. And, of course, the value 2 will be stored in y. The value 2 will be stored in y. Right, let me ask you the following question. Now, inside the function f of x, y, if, for example, I say, x equal x minus 1, and y equal y plus 2, okay? And then I finish execution of the function, and I return. The changed values of x and y, do they affect z and 2? Shall I repeat?
I think yes, because they have the same address.
Do they have the same address? What did I do? When I called f of z2, what happened?
I put the value of z inside x.
The value of z, not the address of z. I put the value of z, the value stored in variable z, I put it in x, صح? Or the value 2, this is not a variable even, صح? This is 2. 2 was stored in y. Like, y equal y plus 2, is this 2 gonna become 4?
No.
No, it will not. And z will not change. Why? Because this is called call by value. I'm copying the value. Whatever happens there, it will not affect anything here, because I just took I took a copy of the value. I just took a copy of the value. So that's why if the function formal parameters are of type integer, and if we change its value inside the function body, does that affect the actual parameter in the function call? The answer is no. Okay, the answer is no. Why? Because I just copied the actual parameter to the formal parameter. I just copied the actual parameter to the formal parameter. Right. Now, let's ask another question. Now, assume that the function formal parameters are of type int star. إيش يعني int star؟ يعني now it is an address of an integer. An address of an integer value. Okay? So that is a pointer or a reference to an integer. And if we change its value inside the function body. Okay? So for example, I have f of, now instead of z, now I will put the address of z. Okay? And 2. Now in the function, the original function, now I will not have f of, int x, int y. What do I have? I have int ايش؟ يلا يا شباب ساعدوني. int
star x.
ايوه int star x. والثانية
int star y.
ليش star y؟ هي 2 it's an integer ما هو address. int y. Okay, int y. So now inside this function, if I do this, star x equal star x plus 1. Does that change the value of Z? Well, let's see what's happening. What is this? The address of Z, صح؟ طيب. Call by value. شو يعني call by value? I'm going to copy the address of Z. I'm going to copy the address of Z. I'm going to copy it here. صح? I'm going to copy it. I'm going to copy it here. So now when I say star X, what am I accessing? So star X is another way of accessing the variable Z. So now if I change star X, am I changing the variable Z?
Yes.
Yes. The address of Z I'm not changing. But the address of Z I'm not changing. But I'm changing the value stored in Z. I'm changing the value stored in Z. And this type of call is called call by reference. As you can see, ليش call by reference? هي الريفرنس, هي الaddress. This is a call by reference. This is a call by address, call by pointer. But we usually say call by reference. We use call by reference. Okay? So does that affect the actual parameter in the function call? And the answer is yes. And the answer is yes. And this is called a call by reference. So let me, kind of give you the summary of what I've just explained. So assume that we have two functions. One function called swap that will swap the values of x and y inside the function. That will swap the values of x and y inside the function. And there is another function which is called pswap. Now, pswap will swap what? It will swap the value pointed to by the integer. Okay, so here, for example, for star like pswap MP and NP, if I want to implement this, it's basically I'm changing the values of star U and star V. So I will have, for example, temp. My handwriting is bad because I'm doing it by the mouse. So for example, temp equals star U, right? Temp equals star U, and then star U equals star V. This is how we change, this is how we swap, صح? Star U equals star V, and then, of course, this is a semicolon, and then star V equal H, equal temp. So we are swapping the values pointed to by these addresses. We're not swapping the addresses. We are not swapping the addresses. We're swapping the values pointed to by the addresses. Okay? So now, how does this work? Well, let's assume that my variable m and n, hey, 10 will 5. This is 10, this is 5. This is the address of 10. This is the address of 5. The address of m, right? Which contains the value 5. Right. What is the value of MP and NP? Well, the value of MP is the address of m, and the value of MP of NP is the address of the variable n. Hey, 1024. Hey, 1024. Well, 1028. This is the 1028. Okay. Right. So now, if I do swap mn, now in the address space of a swap, in the address space of a swap, what do I have? Well, x is equal to 10, y is equal to 5, and then if I swap them inside the function, the x becomes 5 and the y becomes 10. Right? Is this going to be affecting the values of m and n? In swap, is this going to affect m and n when I call swap mn?
No.
No, it will not, because I'm copying by value. I copied the value of m to x. I copied the value of n to y. So the value of m to x, the value of n to y, that's it. Now, if I change x to y, has nothing to do with m or n. Now, let's look at the address space of PSWAP. Now, in PSWAP, what do I have? I have variables u and v, which contain the address of m, the address of n, right? So now, when I change star u, which is the value in this address, and the value in this address, then what am I changing? In fact, I'm changing the values of m and n, right? I'm swapping the values of m and n inside PSWAP. Because temp equals star u, the value stored by the address in u, which is m. But then star u equals star v. What will happen star u equals star v? Well, star v, what's the value stored by the address 1028? Well, it is 5. So 5 assigned to star u. What is a star u? Well, u is the address of variable m. So now I'm going to put the 5 here. I'm putting the 5 there. I'm accessing that 5. I'm accessing that the address of m, and I'm putting 5 in there. And similarly, when I say star v equal temp, well, temp stored the 10. So now I'm going to take the 10. Where am I going to put it? I'm going to put it in the value pointed to by this address. What is this address? Well, this address is n. So I'm going to put the 10 here. So is this going to change the values of m and n? The answer is
Yes.
yes. Okay. Yes. So this is basically called by reference. So this one is so basically this one is called by value, and this one is actually called by reference, because MP and NP are addresses. MP and NP are addresses. So this is very important, this is a very important slide regarding call by value and call by reference. If you really understand it, and if you really understood the example that we did, inshallah, you'll not make any mistake. Okay. Any questions, ya Shabab, before we proceed? Any questions before we proceed? So I'm going to assume that you understand everything, huh? But let us look at pointers to files and how do we, use files. Well, C allows a program to explicitly name a file for input and output. So just like we saw, Python, read input from a file and wrote data to a file. Similarly in C, right? And here, file pointers, can be declared by, specifying file. This is a specific type in C, and notice it's all capital, F-I-L-E, star I-N-P, and file star out P. So this is the input, a pointer to the input file, and this is kind of a pointer to the output file. Okay. So just like Python, you need to first open the files for reading or writing, and you assign them to those file pointers. So in order to open a file for reading, fopen equal infile.txt. This is the file name. And then R. Is this brand new for you? Will you have seen this before?
We have seen it.
It's basically, it's kind of, I mean, the arguments, at least the arguments are exactly the same as Python. Okay, so this is, opening the file for reading, صح? And this is the name of the file. And now we have INP. Well, this is a pointer to a file. So this is basically, it's called the file handle. Okay, it's called the file handle. And similarly, if you want to open a file for write, it is no surprise that you specify W. Okay, you specify W, and of course you specify the output file, the output file. In this case, it's outfile.txt. Okay, so this is the file handle outp for this second file. Okay, right. So how do we read and write? Right. Originally, what did we have? We had scanf and printf, صح? We had scanf, for reading. We had printf for writing or displaying on the monitor. Right. When we want to do file input and file output, we just add an f to the function name. So we have basically fscanf and fprintf. Okay, fscanf and fprintf. So fscanf, we just need to add one argument, which is the pointer to the file. In this case, INP. طيب, what about the rest? Exactly the same as scanf. Exactly the same as scanf. So if I'm reading a double, then I will say, well, this is not a double. Yeah, this is a double because this is L. So %LF, and I will read this as a double. Okay, I will read it, and of course I need to specify the ampersand. So do you see now why do we really have to have the ampersand? So that if I want to read from a file, the value of the variable item is changed. The value of the variable item is changed, because otherwise, if I don't use ampersand, this is called by value. This is called by value. It will not change the value of item. It will not change the value of item. But since I'm using the ampersand, well, this will change the value of item. It will actually read whatever is in that file. So just like scanf, it returns the number of successfully read values. Okay, the number of successfully read values, or a negative number if the end of file is reached. If I was not able to read anything, if I reach the end of file, it will return a negative number. Okay, it will return a negative number. طيب, with fprintf, exactly the same thing. Exactly like fscanf, we need to specify the file pointer in the beginning. Okay, so fprintf outp, we want to print to the output file. So we will use the handle outp, and here this is exactly the same. So we will use the placeholders and the .2f and \n, and then, for example, this is the item. So it will be printed such that there will be two decimal places after the decimal digit. Okay, after the decimal point. So it's exactly the same as printf. Okay, nothing different from printf except that it will be printing to a file. Okay, it will be printing to a file. Again, just like in Python, we have to close the files. We have to close the files also in C. And how do we do that? Fclose. Fclose in P, Fclose out. Okay, Fclose in P and Fclose out. So,
Doctor,
now,
scanf is like a read line method in Python?
no, it's not read line. Read line reads the whole line until the end of line. This only reads a float in the file. The first float that it sees in the file, it will read it. And then it will stop. If you want to read another float, you need to repeat this again.
And what about if printf is like write or not the same?
fprintf is just like printf. It's just like printf. But
I mean,
instead of printing to the monitor, it will print to a file.
Like write method in Python.
Well, remind me, the write method, does it it accepts lines, huh?
It asks the line, then it will write in output file.
The whole line, huh?
I think, or anything that I put it inside the right method, it will print it inside the file, the output file.
So instead of going to the right, why don't you go to printf? Whatever printf is going to print on the screen, it will here print it to a file.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's look at an example of a program that reads and writes, from files. Of course, if you want to generate the file in data.txt, you can actually run this cell, right, by saying Shift Enter, because since this exists in my directory, it basically overwritten it. And this is basically the file where we use the input output double items, and then we have the input status. This is for preparing the files for reading and writing. And now here we read an item, and while input status equals 1, what does that mean? Meaning as long as we are successful in reading one double in item, what do? I print it to the file. And how do I print it? I print it with 2 decimal places. Okay, and then input status equal fscanf. So I will do it again. So I will come here as long as the input status equal 1. Why did I specify input status equal 1? Because I'm reading how many values? I'm reading one value. Huh? So I expect that if it was successful, it will give me the value 1. Okay, it will give me the value 1. So as long as I'm successful in reading, it will continue doing the while until it reaches the end of file. In this case, the value will be negative. It will not be equal to 1. So we will close the file. So now let me say Control C here, and let's come here, Control V. Right. So now in this case, by the way, what you have to do in the online compiler is you have to log in. Okay. For example, I logged in using my Google account. I logged in using my Google account. So here you have you can create a new project. And I called it Files in C. Okay. And what you can upload files through this button. You can see here, upload file, right? Upload file. I already uploaded the end data. So this is the end data that we saw in that cell. And as you can see, it's written like this, right? So what does the main do? Well, the main will basically print 1 in each line. صح ولا لا? It will print 1 in each line, and that one with 2 decimal places. That one with 2 decimal places. So it will print it, and then it will read the next one and continue doing so. Okay. So let me try to run it. So if I say F9, look at what happened by itself. By the way, this is not good practice, not to write anything here. I mean, we should have, for example, it would have been better if we put a print statement here, like say printf execution finished. Okay, execution finished, and let me not forget the semicolon because we got used to Python. So let me run it again. So if I say F9, okay, as you can see, execution finished. Okay, execution finished. Right. So what will happen? So this now will be printed in 1 line with 2 decimal places. This will be printed in 1 line with 2 decimal places. Well, if we come here, this is basically what has been printed. Okay, this is what has been. Okay, Shabab. Any question?
Yes, doctor.
Yes.
Doctor, in the while, what does input status equal to 1? Why we put equal to?
Who can tell him we mentioned, what does input status refer to? Who can tell him? What does input status refer to? يا شباب you were with me ولا مع الأسف كنتوا طول الوقت؟ يا شباب الانبوت status will return the number of successfully read values. The number of successfully read values. So this F scan F, how many values it is reading?
One value.
One اللي هي الدبل اللي هي الايتم. Right? So if it was successful, what should the value of input status be?
One.
Will be 1. Right? So while input status equal 1, what do? You print whatever you read from the input file, print it to the output file, okay? And then attempt reading again. If it is 1, this means that you were successful in reading an item, so you can write it. طيب, or if it was negative, this means that we have reached the end of file. Okay.
So the input status have two values, 1 or -1, right?
Not necessarily only one. Like for example, assume that you put here %LF and then space and then %D. And here you have and item and the address of another variable, let's say n. Okay, and let's define, int n. So in this case, if it was successful, what should be printed?
2.
Input status will be equal to 2. If it was successful, then the input status should be equal to 2 because we have successfully read 2 values. So in this case, instead of saying while input is equal to 1, we will say while input is equal to s. We'll say while input is equal to 2. Okay, we'll say while input. Malish, I took a couple of minutes, but basically, to answer your question regarding file. Any question, ya shabab, on file? So I hope that by this you'll be able to read and write simple files in C, and you will see you can now compare which one is better. To tell you the truth, I really love the way Python reads or handles reading and writing files. Okay, but I will leave that for you to decide. Any question before we break? Thank you very much for attending late night. But inshallah, hopefully we try to finish, all our lectures by next Monday. Okay. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. إن شاء الله نراكم على خير يا شباب. السلام عليكم.
السلام عليكم دكتور.
يعطيك العافية.